Okay, so we have already called the meeting to order. In the past. We had an approval of the overall agenda. We went into in camera and we recessed out of that. So we're just starting the back into the regular agenda. So item number 2 on our list is Border Town. That is not going to happen this evening. So we're able to take that one off very quickly. So at that point, we'll move to item number 3, which is question period. Any questions from the audience?
Hi, I have a question, or I have 3 questions actually. It's Wendy Alder. At the last council meeting on May 14th, Treasurer Beale announced that the province has drastically cut its budget for improvements to provincially designated highways and that there will be no provincial money in 2019 for projects such as the $310,000 for reconstruction of the Catchell Ridge to Bridge Street. That was part of the cost-shared 5-year highway plan. The budget was as follows. It was $201,500 from DTI, $36,000 for town partnering, and $72,500 from the town only, so a total of $310,000. So the town budgeted $72,500 for items that are not covered in the provincial funding, and I'm just wondering if you can advise what that money was for in the budget.
Sure. Mr. Acton, you can probably respond best to that.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. Typically, that would entail anything outside the curbs. So curb line to curb line, which would be sidewalk, topsoiling, and hydroseeding or sod outside of the curb line would be, or water or sewer, and there's no water and sewer on there. So it would be water, sewer, sidewalk, topsoil, and hydroseeding or sod outside of the curb line.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, so Treasurer Beale also reported to council that the town is getting an unexpected one-time windfall, just over $414,000 from the federal gas tax fund. So when asked whether the $414,000 in additional federal tax money could be applied to the Catchell Ridge project, Mr. Hanrahan said that staff would be making recommendations to council soon on the use of the 414. I'm wondering what the status is of that recommendation.
Is that on tonight? Is that on tonight? No. So, Mr. Beale, can you respond to that, please?
Yep, managers met in May and looked at projects that could be recommended under this. We're just in the process of finalizing recommendations, and they'll be brought and recommendations will be brought forward at the July discussion group with anticipation of approving a new 5-year capital investment plan respecting the gas tax fund at the July regular council meeting.
Okay, so the 5-year plan, that's different though than the 5-year plan that I referenced before, right?
Correct. The 5-year or the gas tax capital investment plan is a requirement in order to access the gas tax fund specifically.
Okay, so that plan, does that plan have to be over 5 years, and would the full 414 be used this year?
That plan is over the life cycle of the gas tax funds. So in the case of the current gas tax funds, it's 2019 to 2023.
Okay, so the 414 that you got would cover those 4 years.
Correct, and it's more than the 414. There's also 387 in 2019. I think it's 360 to 380 in 2019. The same amount in 2020. Then there's a higher amount in 2021 and a higher amount in 2022 and 2023 that council has already submitted the investment plan to the province, received approval back, and that money has been allocated strictly for paving projects.
Okay, so the 414 is on top of those numbers you just talked about?
Correct. Right.
Okay, and the plan would be to spend all that this year?
That would be the intentions, but until the recommendations are brought forward, and depending on which projects are listed and the timing related to it, we're not sure. And in the meantime, the province has forwarded the funds. It goes into a separate reserve fund until such time as the capital investment plan is approved, and then council has authorized the expenditure of the money, at which time it's transferred out of the reserve fund and back to pay the bills.
Okay, I have one more question. I know that was more than three, but, so as you're aware, there are over a dozen businesses at exit 506 and many residents. The exit is one of the main entrances to downtown Sackville, and the road is a mess. Many customers walk to these businesses. There are no sidewalks from Churchill over. There's a daycare with over 100 children, which often walk to the marsh or even to the bottle shop to return recyclables, all having to do so with no sidewalks or crosswalks on a very busy road, which is unsafe for adults, let alone children. We would ask that council use a portion of the unexpected windfall money to follow through on their commitment to this project and show that we are important, just like the other exit, where town has invested significant funds into sidewalks and roads. The town has budgeted $108,500 of their own funds for this project, leaving a shortfall of the $201,500, which was provincial money. Using the windfall money to do this project will show the business owners and citizens of Exit 506 that you are committed. It's less than half of the windfall money, and you weren't expecting it, so why not hold your promises true and make this end of town safe for citizens and businesses? So my question is, will council commit to using $201,500 of the $414,000 windfall money to show commitment on this end of town?
Well, I think the timing is perfect. As you heard, there will be a recommendation from the staff, which will come to council next month, and council will decide how it wants it, the final form of that investment plan and how it would go to the province for approval. So your timing is excellent in terms of asking us to consider that when we make that
Please
consideration.
remember us when you're making that decision in July.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Okay, item number 4, you've all had the agenda for a while. Are there any disclosures of interest on any item tonight? Hearing none, we move to the minutes. You have a variety of minutes on page 3, 13, and 14. You've all had that for several days. Any comments or motions? Regular council meeting of May 14th. Moved by acceptance by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Butcher. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Special meeting of May 27th, page 13 of your package. Moved acceptance by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Tower. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. And on page 14, special meeting of June 3rd. Councillor Black.
Under the policy bylaw number 251, it says that a motion will be brought forward at the regular council meeting of June 10th, 2019, which it won't be because it's going back to bylaw. I just wanted to point that out.
Right, so the minute is correct at that point, but subsequently changed, you're correct. Right. Okay, so a motion on the meeting of June 3, moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Evans. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Any business arising? No one? Thank you. We move to Southeast Regional Service Commission. I'll start with that. I'll ask Deputy Mayor to supplement a couple of things here if he so wishes. There were indeed 2 meetings of the CIRC this month. First was the annual general meeting, and the unqualified audit was provided and accepted by the board at that point, as was the appointment of the next auditor for next year. Just a couple of things that came out of that as well was that we would highlight as you know, the board invested in a methane plant that can be used to burn the methane and produce electricity as one of the many elements that it has invested in terms of for both environmental purposes, but also for revenue purposes. And that is now operating in its 2nd year and starting to actually make an accounting profit, which it would have done if it didn't have to follow public sector right from the beginning. So that one was a highlight of the amount of money coming in. And also another highlight in the audit was the role of the regional destination marketing organization, the tourism thing that had took so much time last year. There was an annual report, which I will leave with council in the council box, which gives some elements of more detail in many of these items. I would like to point out one thing which jumped out at me, which was the construction value of the town of Riverview was $20.4 million last year, while in Sackville it was $23.7 million. So 4 times the population, but I did point that out to Ann Siemens. But, so that gives you some idea of how strong our performance was last year. Second thing to note is that the document itself was done in-house, and by really in-house, it was done here in the office, in the Tantramar office, by Tracy McDonald mostly. And when you see it, you'll see there's a very, very high quality, which has also saved money for the Regional Service Commission by using in-house data. And there's a lot of very well-presented information in this document. And so congratulations to Tracy on that. Other item of the AGM was the election of the executive. Jerry Gauguin, the mayor of Petitcodiac, is now the chair. Roger Cassis of Shediac is a vice chair. And Ann Siemens, as the former chair, is a member of the executive. There are a variety of appointments to the various committees. For me, I stay on the strategic committee, which has 3 working groups doing most of the work this year. And I am on the governance and taxation working group, which actually meets this week for the first time. So that was the AGM. We then went into a regular meeting, and we had a presentation from Opportunities New Brunswick that I think is of interest in terms of their effort to create a marriage between businesses that wish to employ people but not have them come to the office, and those who would like to work from home. So it was about looking for ways in which people could be notified, where you could have locations for people to get information, how employers can sign up. And I did raise a question about perhaps there is an opportunity to bring in some private developers if this is an attempt to bring people in. If we chose to do something a little differently, that maybe there's a way that we could also build some housing that orients it to those type of people, and whether that might be a community development opportunity for us. The ONB people said we never thought about anything like that. We just are asking about how do we get people to apply for jobs. So one of the employers who is very interested is across the street, and there's a significant number of jobs that they're pursuing. So it may be something that we need to pay a lot more attention to. Home-based business, basically, home-based operators with employers elsewhere. Also in the regular meeting, a PRAC member was appointed for the Riverside Albert area. We will be interested to know that we thought we had gotten DTI to change its dikes policy as it relates to recreation. That hasn't gotten through yet, and it looks like there is more resistance to using dikes as part of the regional trail system, so that effort continues to be ongoing. Unsightly premises continues to be an issue for many of the local governments. Eco 360, I think Deputy Mayor may speak about that. We had a variety of investments in the waste management section of the board. It is by far the biggest financial element of the board's opportunities and what it does. For example, replacing of one baler of material that could bale the material they get was $1 million, and that was approved at this meeting. We also have one last thing I would like to note, which is that at our next meeting, there will be a motion to come to eliminate one-use plastic straws within the region from those who produce them. The idea being aimed at the producers. Anything to supplement on the meetings there, Council Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Over the last month, I've been to 2 events that were sponsored by the Service Commission. In May, Dwayne Acton and I went to the a presentation on behalf of Eco 360 about what the future is going to look like for waste management in the area. I had promised to give a report at this meeting, and they told us they'd send us the PowerPoints we could use to do that. I got the PowerPoints this morning, so we'll try and do that for July. The second one, Michael Beal and I went to the meeting on policing in the area. This was touted as an information gathering session by the province, and I have to say, Mr. Beal did a very good job of defending our position on several things. And they're just, it seems that the same themes keep coming up for them. We were the fourth session they'd had. Other ones had been up in Florenceville and Woodstock and so on. The main thing people seem to want from the RCMP is more visibility or presence in the areas they're working. And it was a little, Mr. Beal may choose to chime in here, it was a little troubling to me that they spent most of the time referring to the PPSA agreement, the provincial one, and not very much about the municipal ones. And so we were, I was a little taken back by that. It strikes me they don't, in a way, I feel like they don't take it quite seriously. There's certain municipalities do have separate arrangements with the RCMP and aren't part of the provincial plan. To join the provincial plan, I think Mr. Beal pointed out, would certainly not be cheaper for us, and we may lose control of some of the things we now have some control over. So I don't know if Michael wishes to add anything to that.
Good. Anything else? Well, I'll note on the policing, there are two efforts going on right now. One is under the auspices of the provincial government, which is what you were attending, which was arranged through the board, through the Regional Services Board, but it's actually a provincial government review of policing. And at the same time, the regional board itself has a working committee looking at the policing governance models. So UMNB has formed a policing review committee for the provincial one, and they've asked me to join that committee. I was unable to attend this meeting, but where the public meeting, but there is supposed to be a session of that working committee from the UMNB in the next week or so. So we will have a voice at that one. So it's a bit confusing. There seems to be a lot of balls in the air, and the consensus is, as the Deputy Mayor said, our type of contract is not getting heard and not being appreciated. So we have to really, really push here. There seems to be a bias towards this other model, which is the regional model, and collapsing them, everybody, including ourselves, into that. Okay. So that's it. Any questions on any of this? Sorry, Councillor Tower?
Thank you. Just a couple. First, on the report, you say there's a copy of that in the councillor office.
This one will go there.
Okay.
Right after this meeting.
Okay, and the second part, when you talk about plastic straws, was the conversation limited just to plastic straws and nothing else?
It was a notice of a motion to come, and there was widespread support for it, but they wanted to see, a couple of people wanted to get involved in the drafting of the motion, so we don't know what the final form that motion will take.
I thought it was single-use plastic generally.
It was straw specific in the notice. Councillor Finney?
Yeah, Your Worship, you mentioned something about the flare. Now, the last couple of years, there's been a flare, and they've been making some money off it it's generate energy from the methane.
Yes.
What was the company that turned around and put that in place?
It's done by the Waste Management Corporation itself.
Okay.
It owns the gas coming off of the landfill.
But was there an engineering firm that did that?
Yes, there was, but I can't recall who that was, who was involved with that.
They've been working on it for quite a while. It took that long because it was there when we were on the board, Michael, if you remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
I think it just started last year in operation, and this is the
I wonder
full
why it
first
took
year.
so long to get in place, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question is more along the Eco 360. And beforehand, when it was the Southeast Solid Waste, we used to get monthly, quarterly reports on diversion and number of cells that they're having to open up. And how the market is for recyclables and that type of thing. I'm just wondering if that's something that's available still, if it's something we could start getting monthly or quarterly to kind of give us an idea. We also used to get something performance-wise as a municipality as to how much our residents are participating in regards to materials and that. So I'm just kind of wondering if that type of information is still available, or.
There is some of that data. It isn't consistently raised, and in this particular meeting, we didn't get into any of the detail of that for, I'm not sure whatever reason. I think the Waste Committee did not meet was the one reason why we didn't get that data. But generally we do. I'll make a note that we'll bring some of the specific data that we get, and if it's not up to par, then let us know and we'll go back to get more. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Finney again?
I'm going to say, Your Worship, as a matter of fact, that report, Michael and I used to bring it back, but it was put together by Bill Slater, who happened to be the director at the time. Roland is now, so maybe he could put that together for us and turn around and send it to us.
Sure, I'll follow up with waste-specific data for the monthly reports, okay. Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions? Heard none, we'll move to the planning section, and Ms. Wade, you have the floor.
Thank you, Council, Your Worship. So I have Laurie Bickford's report here. I think it was in the council package, so I won't go into great detail. I don't know if I'll be able to answer a lot of questions. She's not here tonight. But it does show that there's been 26 permits issued to date, 14 in this month alone. Construction value of $1.7 million at this point this year. So it's not bad. Last year there was a couple of significant projects that came off the ground. So it's certainly nothing to be bashful about on that one. There have been sidewalk cafe approvals. I do not know how many, but it is, I think the practice now is that if there's no changes to the cafes, then it gets approved from our office. So those are happening. It's a little more smooth than it used to be. And there was a PRAC review as well. So we're doing one PRAC meeting a month now. It was determined at the board. It wasn't very cost effective to be having 2 meetings. We were just spreading things out over 2 meetings instead of, and most of the urgent business is, it's mostly accessory buildings and side yard setbacks and things in the rural areas. So we haven't had, there is an opportunity to have a special meeting if necessary. And I should clarify something. So it's Tracy McDonald that did the thing, not me. But that is, the annual report is available on our website too. So it's completely available and it's bilingual. So it's available for anyone to take a look at. That's
Any questions on the planning report? Councillor Evans, please.
Just to clarify, what, you said the PRAC report or the regional office report, planning?
the document, the annual report that Tracy McDonald, so that's available. I mean, the PRAC minutes are, right.
Any other confusing questions on planning? No? Okay, so Ms. Wade, are you leading us along this next item of the public hearing?
I am. Mr. Burke, I believe, has the PowerPoint.
So this portion is a public hearing on the application to amend bylaw number 244.
Yep. Okay, you can, yeah, I don't need that one. Okay, so we've received an application to undertake a text amendment to the Sackville zoning bylaw, and the purpose is to permit a cannabis micro-cultivation operation in the agriculture conservation zone. So specifically, I'll break it down. There's 4 parts to the proposal. One is to amend the definition of agricultural use to remove the prohibition against controlled substances. I'll explain all this in more detail in a minute. The second one is to add definitions for micro and standard cultivation of cannabis uses. Third is to add micro-cultivation as a permitted use in the agriculture conservation zone. And fourth is to add micro and standard cultivation as permitted uses in the industrial zone. So just always start these kind of things looking at policy. So the policy in the agricultural conservation area, it basically is intended to protect the area for agricultural production and for flood mitigation and the marshes themselves. we basically want to limit any kind of development that's happening on those lands to agricultural uses or research and conservation building and structures. In the zoning bylaw itself, the definition of agricultural use means general farming, and it talks about cultivation of land, the processing and storing of field crops, vegetables, fruit, nursery stock, et cetera. But it says such uses do not include a cannery, abattoir, raising of fur-bearing animals, or the growing of controlled substances. So just to frame all this, when the bylaw was amended in 2016, the definition of an agricultural use was changed at that point to add that that section in about controlled substances in that definition, because everyone knew that there was going to be cannabis cultivation, and there was every indication it was going to be permitted just about everywhere. And general interpretation at that time was that cannabis cultivation is very similar to other, it's a growing of a product for human consumption. So it's really hard to distinguish it between corn or other things. So from an interpretation point of view, by putting the prohibition in there, it really restricted things. In 2018, when the Cannabis Act was introduced, the federal government introduced 3 levels of cultivation that the rest of us weren't aware that was going to happen. So there's the household level, so anyone and everyone's allowed to grow 4 plants. Micro-cultivation, which is, it's a limit of 200 meters squared of production area, so it's about 2,000 square feet. And then there's standard cultivation, which is anything more than 200 meters squared. So there was those considerations that came in with the new act in just last fall. So again, cannabis cultivation generally is considered to be similar to growing of other crops. So when the applicant came in and asked the town to consider microcultivation, we had to take a look at what was permitted and what wasn't. So right now, it's a complete prohibition in agricultural areas on cannabis growing, or the growing of controlled substances, I should say. If we just remove that section, though, from the bylaw, it means that cannabis can be produced anywhere agriculture is permitted. And that may create some unintended land use conflicts, because we know that there are some conflicts that occur with the standard or the large-scale cannabis production. Let me just flick it. So this is just it's not the entire zoning map, but it's a good portion of it. So agriculture uses are permitted in all the green areas. The light green areas is rural residential. The dark green areas is the agriculture conservation. The light green areas have quite a few, it's a lot of residential developments as well. The dark green areas, it's very much limited. And I just pulled this out of the zoning bylaw today so you could see the limiting uses that are in that agricultural zone. There's agricultural uses, the Dykeland Dykes Abattoir rehabilitation is permitted, wildlife reserves, any existing residential is permitted there. Small-scale wind turbines, wind farms, research conservation, ecotourism. So the proposal is to add microcultivation of cannabis to this zone. The recommendation is also to differentiate between that microcultivation and standard cultivation in the definitions. So again, if we don't define things like this in the plan, it leaves it open to interpretation, and it depends on who's reading it, what happens. So we wanted to be specific about it. So that way we can distinguish between the 2 types. So the microcultivation, again, there are similar impacts to, say, a dairy barn or any kind of your average farm operation, whereas standard cultivation, given that there's no limit to size, the recommendation from staff is that it's still considered more appropriate to be set up in an industrial zone instead of being permitted in any agricultural area. The PRAC heard this application in the end of May, I guess it was, and they recommended that the text amendment be adopted as we presented it. So the bylaw is available, and it's there. It's in very small font, but basically it's a change to the definition. So taking out the growing of controlled substances in agricultural definition. It's adding definitions for microcultivation and adding a definition for standard cultivation of cannabis. And then it is also adding in the permitted uses section of the zoning bylaw, in the agriculture conservation zone, adding microcultivation in that section, and in the industrial zone, again, being specific and adding standard and microcultivation of cannabis in that zone. So tonight, again, is the public hearing. Under the Community Planning Act, we're required to present to the public and hear any comments for or against the proposal. It was advertised 21 days, more than 21 days in advance on websites, the town's website and our website. There was also an article in the Trib, I believe. We didn't receive any phone calls or visits to the office or discussions about this outside of this meeting, so.
So the purpose of the public hearing is to have any questions from council and, of course, from the public. If there are any questions, now's the time to stand up and please ask them. Similarly, council, if you have any questions that you think the public would want to know, feel free to ask those as well. Councillor Michaud, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the materials that council had received in regards to the PRAC meeting discussing this, it was indicated that there possibly was some concern maybe by one of the PRAC members, and I'm just kind of wondering, was there any discussion? What happened? Was there any particular concerns this member had, or something that maybe council should be aware of?
When this came up, so the other thing you have to, because it's a regional body, there is I don't even think it's a formal application yet, but there's talk about one of the largest outdoor cannabis growing operations being set up near Capillet. It's a very sensitive topic. So one of the PRAC members is from there. So actually, we kept having to steer the discussion back to the issue of microcultivation in one specific zone. But it was much more about cannabis growing in anywhere and what so there was a lot of discussion, and at the end of the day, there was one dissenting vote, but it was not overwhelming in terms of the specifics.
There was nothing in particular that came of concern in regards to proximity to or odor or anything like that.
I mean, well, the discussion was about that, but again, the comparisons that were being made were some of the major operations in Quebec where there have been a lot of complaints. So again, this is a micro, so it's limited in size and scope.
No other questions? No questions from the audience? Just for clarity, my question was the Cannabis Act actually defined the size of these micro, that is federal legislation.
It's 200 square meter maximum cultivation space, so that's not the size of the building, but that's the area that they're permitted to actually cultivate product in. So there would be other storage space and things in a building or a structure meant for that. So any application is going to be probably slightly larger than that, but it's very tightly regulated on that. The licensing is for that. So in the definition that I'm proposing in the bylaw, it refers to not the 200 meters, but the microcannabis as regulated by the federal government in case they up it or lower it or whatever government may do.
Okay, Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. Just for clarification, are you able to let me know what 200 meters squared means in square feet?
Yeah, it's about 2,000. Yeah.
Everybody heard that? Approximately 2,000 square foot building for that? Okay, the purpose today was simply to have the public hearing, and council will take any input it gets, including any more that comes as a result of people's hearing about this event here tonight. And it will hopefully, we're targeting for next month, I would presume, our first reading of the proposed amendments. Okay. Okay, we're good. We will move on then to item 8, which is reports. And Mayor's report, I will again defer to Deputy Mayor on a couple of items here, mostly because I was traveling an awful lot this last little while. I did have a couple of interviews with CBC on the retention pond, both on the radio and TV, separate interviews. Participated in the Walk in the Park. We had a variety of contacts that I was unable to make. I think the deputy mayor may have done the Shriner flag raising, the nursing home week, and Home Hardware's grand opening of its new reveal of its format. On community-supported education, I am still working on the steering committee. We pretty well have that ready. At the same time, the money has flowed to the nonprofit corporation, and they're in the process now of looking to hire a community coordinator that will start to bring the two parts together of the nature of the supports that the community can offer to the education system and what the education system is looking for in terms of supports. And I mentioned last time that we, luckily enough, got a research intern under external funding who's looking at the economic impact of education and knowledge businesses to the town, and she's continuing on that work with little direction from myself on it. But I did want to note that I did meet the Vice President of CN on multiple topics when I was at FCM, and I'll bring you a little more detail as we unfold. We basically are into an email exchange now on what we felt we had achieved and where we would go with that. Did meet as well with the Union of Municipalities in New Brunswick. We are continuing to look at the way to have a pilot to address flooding around railways, which we've talked about a couple of times as a method that other local governments could use and the railways could understand where they were coming from. We had a variety of discussion of the policing reviews, what we just described in terms of two separate items, and trying to figure out where the infrastructure funding was. Over the last month, that has firmed up a bit, and you'll hear a little bit more about that tonight. Also met once again with the town of Amherst and the warden of Cumberland County, both of which, of course, worked with us to get the Chantamar Dykes federal provincial money, and they basically gave the same response that I've been telling you. We've heard nothing from the technical departments. We've heard nothing except that it's imminent. We'll have the study any day, any day, any day. So they're as frustrated as we are. We had a meeting in this room with residents around the retention pond, and that lasted about an hour. It was a good exchange of questions and I think good answers. And then finally, the last is just a variety of consistent inquiries. And I raise that just because it has reached that level where it's become a very consistent question of individuals asking about perhaps coming here, whether it's buying houses, retiring, or even bringing a small business in. It's very, very consistent. So it's kind of remarkable that it's reached that stage, that it's almost on any topic, any month now, of people that I've run into. Deputy Mayor, you have a few events that you followed up. Maybe you could supplement that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I went, when the mayor was away, I went to 3 events in town. In no particular order, we had a flag raising out front here for the Shriners Week, which was last week. I attended the Home Hardware opening, which was incredibly successful. They told me by 10 o'clock in the morning they had over 400 people through the place, and it was just as busy the second day as well. And the third event was I attended the lunch of the female barbershop quartet convention that was in town, which was about 350 people. It was in Jennings. I went with some apprehension because what I know about female barbershop quartet singing, you could put on the head of a pin. But it was actually quite enjoyable and quite impressive to hear 350 people singing in perfect 4-part harmony. So you did miss a bit of a performance.
Thank you. So any questions on the Mayor and Deputy Mayor's report? Councillor Michaud, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just, I guess, in regards to the meeting with residents and near the retention pond that happened on May 27th, one of the residents had provided me with kind of a list of the questions that were kind of raised and discussed. I'm just kind of wondering if those answers and that type of information could be shared with council as to what the responses were in regards to these questions and kind of where that went.
I suppose we didn't have specific, we didn't record questions per se,
No.
but I don't know, it is coming up on one of the reports, and maybe we can raise it at that point.
Okay,
And get a little
sure.
more specific on,
Yep.
on questions you might have.
Yep, good.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Reports B, CAO report, please.
Thank you, Worship. I guess my report of the departmental report starts on page 20, and this is obvious in the listing of the various departmental reports. The past month was very busy once again. There's lots of programs and services going on in preparation for spring and summer, and I must admit, I guess I was, in reading our recent newsletter, I was somewhat struck by just looking at the broad range of opportunities and information that exists, which I thought was extremely good. And I guess I, like our recreation program manager has done, is to remind people that if you are looking to receive that on a regular basis, then you can go into our website and register to receive that. And the website itself is, there's, much of the information is there, so it's a matter of your preferences of where you like to pick up information. And I know not everybody's into websites, so we still continue with the regular ads and as well as the Civic Center information. So there's a great amount of information out there that our staff puts out in various forms. And in my report, I think I listed about 10 different areas in terms of where that information can be found, and as well as project updates and so on. So I encourage residents, if you don't have an idea of what's happening and you're wondering, take a look around at the websites, or newsletters or radio ads, depending on what your preference is. Certainly on the capital project side, things are continuing as well, and and there's a number of motions looking to go forward this evening. The continuation of the Lawrence Street project with Phase 3, as far as the information on that, for an opportunity for council to determine what direction they wish staff to follow up on. We also have some appointments of bylaw officers, contract services with canteens, as well as a number of events that have some logistical opportunities as well. So, and finally, I guess I just want to publicly say thank you to council and residents for providing me the opportunity to attend the annual Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators Conference that kind of exists in and around the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference as well. So with that, Your Worship, that's my report, and if there's any questions, I'd look to address them for you.
Any questions? Councillor Evans, please.
Yeah, not a question, but a comment. I was really impressed with that list of methods of communication. I mean, there's something there for everyone, and when it comes to communication, it is a two-way thing, and so that you can make all kinds of efforts, but people also have to be receptive. So if you do want to know, pick your poison, right? Find a way that you want to find out about stuff and seek it out, because I think staff is doing a wonderful job trying to make information available, and I think there's a lot of information there. I agree with the CAO when he talked about that newsletter. There's a lot of really neat stuff going on. So kudos all around.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Any other comments or questions on the CAO report? No? Okay. I think somebody wants to get home to watch a basketball game. Moving along. We will move to Finance and Administration. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. First, present the motion on bills and payrolls. I move the council accept the bills and payrolls for the month of May 2019 as follows. General Government, $709,081.25. General Capital, $228,063.75. Utility Government, $361,702.23. Utility Capital, $0. And salaries, $304,930.51.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Tower. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
All right, the financial statements, our report, appears on page 23 of the package, and the financial statements are included to the end of May 2019. We continue to be on target for the current fiscal year. The auditors completed their work in April and presented the 2018 audit to council at the May special council meeting. We have sent the required copies of the 2018 audit to the province and to the bank for review, and the audit's also been posted on the municipal website. Water bills went out on April 17th and had a due date of May 17th. We'll be sending out reminder notices in early June to those who have not paid the current or past due bills, and we'll also be reviewing accounts over 90 days past due during June and send out shut-off notices to those accounts during the month. 2019 dog tags remain available at Town Hall. Proof of rabies vaccinations must be provided at the time of purchase. The dog tags were due on March 31st and are now subject to a $20 late fee. And we will continue with the review of tags sold in 2019 versus prior years to ensure those whom have dogs registered in town are indeed registered. They can be subject to a fine in addition to registration fees. And on the topic of animals, or remind people that the weather is warming up, and leaving animals in closed cars over during this weather is not a good thing. And everyone will once again receive a familiar face at the front desk of Town Hall as we welcome back Sky Tower on June 10th, completing her maternity leave. And the bylaw enforcement and animal control statistics for May are attached. We've hired 3 bylaw students for the summer, and a motion is being presented to allow them to enforce our bylaws. And I'd like to now introduce them. We have Adriel Cobo-Moran. Could you stand up? Thank you. Seth George, and Amy Sear.
Well, my name is Adriel Cobo, and come from the city of Moncton. And really happy to be part of the team from the bylaw by Mike and Mr. Corey here. I'm looking forward to work for the city and have more experience about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Seth George. I'm from Amherst. I'm very excited for this opportunity, and I look forward to working for the town of Sackville to enforce the bylaws. Thanks.
Thank you, Seth.
Hi, my name is Amy Sear. I'm originally from Campbellton, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to work for you, and I look forward to spending the summer here and enforcing your bylaws.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And finally, a motion is being presented relating to making of an application for infrastructure funding for Phase 3 of the Lawrence Street Stormwater Mitigation. The total application is $4.6 million, of which the municipal share would be $1.52 million at 33% funding. And I'll read that motion in due course. And I think I'll leave, before I read motions, any questions on the report for the treasurer?
Councilor Black, please.
Thank you. In the package, it talks about Lawrence Street Phase 1 continuing to have no changes in the submission as we await final expenses in 2019. This has been going on for a while, and it says, as per the agreement, the final 10% of payments are held back until the final claims and reports are submitted. And then in Phase 2, it talks about the holdbacks being completed by March 31st, 2020. So with Phase 1, are we still within that time period? Is the holdup still the same as it's been? Can you give a little more information?
Yeah, absolutely. Phase 1 and Phase 2 both have a March 31st, 2020 deadline. That was part of the infrastructure application process. And as you recall, during budget, we had allocated St. James and Bennett Street to be done. Originally done by Public Works crew. We've switched that, and that was the one that we contracted out as we had some money remaining in Phase 1, and St. James, of course, and Bennett would qualify under the final expenditures relating to Phase 1. Dwayne has indicated that it'll be late summer before they complete St. James Bennett. So until that is completed, we will not be submitting any further claims relating to Phase 1. But once that is submitted, we will then submit the final claim in addition to all the reports they require relative to the work that was completed, and then be able to get the holdback plus any outstanding funds that are ready to be released to us.
Any other, do we have a motion on the bylaw officers? Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right, the motion I'm going to read was just handed to me. Apparently it's somewhat different from the one that's in the package. I move that whereas council has adopted various bylaws and whereas the municipality wishes to ensure the proper enforcement of its bylaws by appointing an appropriate person to such positions, now therefore be it resolved that the following persons are hereby authorized, designated, and appointed for act, excuse me, to act for and on council's behalf in order to properly enforce all of the municipality's bylaws pursuant to the municipality's authority outlined below. Amy Sear, Seth George, and Adriel Cobo-Morin, effective June 10th, 2019. Be it further resolved that the above noted authorization, designation, and appointment is subject to the following. Sections 133, 134, 135, and 136 of the Community Planning Act in order to enter upon property, issue orders, seek orders from the Court of Queen's Bench, and commence proceedings in provincial court. Sections 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 72, 80, 128, 129, 130, 131, 132, 133, 135, 139, 144, 150, 151, 153, and 195 of the Local Governance Act in order to serve tickets, commence proceedings in provincial court, enter upon property, and issue notices for dangerous or unsightly premises. Section 14 of the Police Act in order to serve tickets and properly execute their role as bylaw enforcement officer. Be it further resolved that the above noted authorization, designation, and appointment shall continue until the person cease to be employed by the municipality or until the appointment is limited or rescinded by council.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Tower. Open for discussion. I would just note that the difference between what we had on our original and what was read was an updated sections of the updated acts so that it's current to those acts as opposed to our written element, which was to the previous acts.
Did the applicants know that public speaking was part of the process?
They do now.
No? Well done.
Any question? Question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. And welcome aboard. Thank you. I think you actually have to get to work tonight too, don't you? Yeah. So, thank you, Corey, for bringing them in, and thank you, and best of luck, folks. There was, you have a motion coming. Just prior to that, there has been some exchange of a background to this, and I just wanted to, because some have been involved and some of us haven't for some period of time, I just want to bring it up to where that takes place, and we'll probably have a lot of discussion following the motion about where this came from. But I just want to remind people that that the topic of freshwater flooding has been around for some time. And as I understand, it really came to light to council when we received in 2014 a letter from CN threatening legal action due to freshwater flooding of the CN rail, both its facility and the railway roads. And that, as you may not recall, the event in 2014, because it was not a significant event, it was simply the right combination of duration and intensity and timing of tidal cycles that caused that to happen. But that did bring some attention to the question of what the legal responsibility of the town was, particularly as it relates to the railway crossing. There are other elements that have to be protected, other infrastructure that had to be protected, but the one that I believe has been a focus of concern has been the CN rail. They did withdraw that letter at that point because there was a lot of discussion between the town and CN at that point. However, it then led to some discussion over what the data was, what the statistics were, and what the implications were of that recurring or happening again. And CN has made it clear that they're very litigious on this topic, and that if something stops a train, that is somebody else's responsibility, they believe that courts will find that responsible party responsible for all of the impacts of that. And where we sit, any train that's stalled here affects basically a supply line that goes across North America. So if we're lucky and it's only for an hour or two, that's significant, but it does delay a whole variety of other trains for an hour or two. So if it's going to be a day or two, recall this is going to be tens of millions of dollars of potential liability, tens of millions of dollars. So that combination of looking at what the liability would be, talking to our insurance people about, well, you'll cover that, right? Well, you have to meet regular standards. What are your standards? Which then led to discussion over climate change data, what the watershed looks like, how much water is going to come down, and in a industrial standard for insurance is 1 in 100 years. The 1 in 100 year event that we were presented with would produce 11 square meters of water a second around the railway track from that scenario. That would require a small bridge, or perhaps even a medium-sized bridge, under the railway for that to not happen. The reality of the insurance industry is if you do not build to what is a 1 in 100 year event that you're aware of and know of, then your insurance doesn't apply because you consciously chose not to build to the acceptable standard of the day. So all of that is the scenario in which there has been some long-standing activity to try to address this. So I just wanted to remind of where that all came from to this point in time. We'll get into more detail about what's happened in the last little while, but that is the background to the motion that the Deputy Mayor is about to read, and then we will have the floor open for discussion on that.
Thank you, Worship. I move that Council supports and authorizes an application for funding consideration under the Integrated Bilateral Agreement for Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Phase 3, Lawrence Street Stormwater Mitigation Project, which includes retention pond at the former Pickard Quarry, street and railway crossings, major ditching control structures, and an additional retention pond at an anticipated total cost of $4.6 million.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Black. Either of you wish to start a commentary, or would you like to?
I think I'll turn it over to the Treasurer for comments on the funding of this.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken, Your Worship. As we know with these agreements, there's municipal portion, federal, provincial portion. So I'm going to touch here. I've done a financial analysis since our last information on this. Essentially $4.6 million, and I've had to touch on what we'll classify as the worst case scenario, just because there are still some unknowns. So the unknowns are what the provincial portion would contribute. So essentially at a $4.6 million cost, in the worst case, the municipal share would be $1.52 million. So that's at 33%. We know that the federal government is contributing 40%. Rumor has it that the province is up to 33%, so that could drop from 33 down to 27. But at this point in time, I've had to look at it as a 33%. As well, we've looked at the cost of borrowing relating to what Municipal Finance Corporation issues, and I've had to do that at 5%. That's what the Municipal Finance Corporation advises municipalities to use when they're making applications for financing. Our last financing was less than 2.5%. So again, I've had to use the worst case scenario. So the cost of annual borrowing over 10 years for us would be $216,000. The debentures that we have expiring in the next 2 years is we have one expiring at the end of this year, which is $85,000, and one expiring at the end of 2020, which is $91,000. So that leaves us a shortfall of approximately $40,000 relating to if we use strictly the debentures expiring versus what the new debenture would be. As we know, through the asset management plan is looking at renewal of existing assets. So, and we know this is not an existing asset, this is a new asset. So, what happens with the asset management plan, of course, as we renew existing assets, it flows upward. If we add new assets, the percentage can get worse. So in order to continue to improve the existing assets in accordance with the asset management plan, we need to continue to increase our funding to our existing assets as well. And we need to look at doing that in the range of $50,000 to $100,000 per year. So it throws a couple of things into this. Basically, I don't want to say that at this point in time that we could do this with the potential of no tax increase. What my projections show is that in a worst case scenario that it's 33% funding municipal, 5% borrowing, and our tax base stays relatively neutral, we could have to look at a 1 to 1.5 cent tax rate increase in the future, the year after we borrow for this. I'm not saying that is a guaranteed because there are other factors that could result in that being reduced. Those factors, as I've already indicated, a couple of them, reduce municipal share of infrastructure costs if it goes to 27 or 30%, reduce cost of borrowing, which unless interest rates fluctuate drastically in the next couple years, that would help. Reduce actual cost of construction based on actual tender results. Having funds remaining in our capital out of revenue to use, our capital reserve fund to use in phase 2. Above average increase in annual tax base from recent new constructions. We know we had really good constructions that have not been fully implemented in our tax base yet. Using some of our annual capital to revenue to offset borrowing for phase 3. So those would all be things that would be evaluated at the time during budget season. So finance has crunched the numbers. I don't want, and the recommendation is that we would support the application with our share, but knowing that these are the factors that may come into play as we progress to the final borrowing application of having to borrow up to 1.52 million towards our share of this. So I feel that we can, from running the numbers, that we can run this with minimal effect. It would extend our projected debt reduction plan by another further 2 to 3 years as well. But it's part of progress as well, and these things come up. When the municipal building was constructed, we looked at that, we evaluated it, and we progressed. When phase 1 and phase 2 undertook, we did the same thing. And as we know, in phase 2, with the positives that we've had with budgets coming in under budgets, revenue being increased in the last few years, and the money we had available in our reserve fund, we were able to do phase 2 without any borrowing. So that was a plus. And if all goes well and the factors that come into play, then again we would not have to increase any tax rate, nor would we have to potentially borrow the full 1.52 million. That could be reduced by the province as well as by money that we could allocate to the reserve fund if we have another good year or another 2 good years by the time the expenses are made relative to this. So from a financial perspective, I feel that we can fit this within our overall, those are the factors that come into play relative to financing of the project of this magnitude through the infrastructure program.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. I was just going to ask for any more staff input, or do you want to? Okay. Mr. Acton, do you want to describe any of the elements for people to understand a little better before we get into it?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll just start with the quarry part of it. Again, it would be the addition of a retention pond, and the strategy was that this is a retention pond that would be upstream of the Lawrence Street retention pond. Obviously, that's going to improve the situation on Lawrence Street, and that's a big part of this retention pond. It will have an outlet structure similar to the outlet structure of the existing pond on Lawrence Street to accumulate the water in the retention pond. Head wall. The other thing that will also helps with is the infrastructure that is currently taking the water from the quarry to Lawrence Street Obviously, it was put in many, many years ago before climate change and all that. So this greatly helps with the flow of the water from the quarry to the Lawrence Street through that existing infrastructure, because we're retaining water at the quarry and releasing it slower to Lawrence Street. So that's a bit on the quarry. And then the phase 3 with the additional retention pond. If you remember, we had 100,000 cubic meters. The phase 2 that's currently being constructed gives us capacity of about 40,000 cubic meters. The retention pond at the quarry would give us another 20,000 cubic meters of water, so that's 60,000. And with the addition of the third pond, that was going to give us the additional 40,000 cubic meters to be able to handle the 100,000 cubic meters that the consultant had evaluated during all the analysis of the retention required. That would include the ditching and the pipes under CN to get the water out to the long-term approach and finish the long-term approach that was presented to council some time ago. Thank you, Your Worship.
But it does not include the Boiteau that had previously been talked about, is that not correct?
That is correct. Again, at this point, the abados, all the abados in the area are provincial responsibilities. And we feel that DTI need to step up to the plate and upgrade their infrastructure to be able to handle the flow and the water that we'll be sending towards potentially new abados. That is their responsibility and their infrastructure and their asset.
Okay. Councillor Evans first, please.
Thank you for that, both the financial implications and the technical background. When we established as a priority that stormwater mitigation was when we established that that was our #1 priority, we approved a plan that took the water out through a new route to the place by Russell Metals. And we were all frustrated when we realized we couldn't afford to do it that way. And I can remember sitting here and saying, that is still the preferred plan. Everything we're doing with phase 2 is still consistent with doing that. And, hope, looking at the mayor, because he had said something about potential new funding, thinking, I really hope that's right, but there's a very real possibility there wouldn't be, and phase 2 would be as good as it gets. So this fell in our lap again, and I'm hugely excited that that possibility, which we would require to do this right, is there. And the last point I want to make is what we're doing here is preparing for the worst case scenario, a situation that has not yet occurred and with any luck will never occur. But if it does and everything lines up badly, we will have the capacity to mitigate it. So most of the time, it's going to look like we don't need this. The retention ponds will be empty most of the time, and even when there's significant rainfall events, they're not all going to be full. This is preparing for the worst case. So I just want to make that point to all the people who say we don't need to do this, because it's like I've had a house for 40 years and had fire insurance for 40 years and never got a penny, so I guess that was a big mistake having fire insurance. I don't think so. I think this is a good idea, and I'm happy to speak in favor of the motion.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. First, a bit of information, secondly, a question. The information is that if the province comes through with their funding and our share drops to 27%, it saves us roughly $300,000. So our share would drop to about 1.24 from 1.5. The question is perhaps best answered by the mayor. What is the relationship of this project and the Abadeau reconstruction to the study that's going on in the Chignecto area? Is anything come of that?
Well, I don't think, Mr. Actor, you have any new information, correct?
The only information I could add, Your Worship, is I did speak to Mike Pauley, DTI, I believe it was last Tuesday, and he said they're very close to getting that tender out for that study. And it is only a study. It's not construction, not building new dikes. It's merely a study that the $700,000, I believe it was, was allocated to do that study. So they're very close. I suspect to see that out to tender in the month of June, but we've been saying that for many months now as well.
So the only, the mayor of Amherst, myself, and the warden of Cumberland County was invited to, along with our CAOs, to meet with the people prior to an announcement of the funding about the nature of the discussions they'd been having. And it was then they were happy to know that money was going to be coming, and that's what we were actually lobbying for. But that is the only technical conversation we had, and that conversation talked about the difficulties, the study scope, the difficulties of building dikes on marsh. I pointed out that their study area did not include Westcock, and as you know, Westcock was built to the same height as it previously was when they rebuilt it, but when we asked to rebuild this one, it was to be built to a potential standard of over 11 meters height, which was dramatically different. Went from a cost that would have been the same as Westcock to something quite higher. So all of the indications are that they will be looking for the preferred place for protecting the marsh and the preferred methods, and that would include some of those technical questions. But our staff haven't been involved, and our leadership has not been invited to the table either, nor has Amherst or Cumberland. So we don't know the details of those discussions until that tender call comes out. Okay. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Worship. As this motion was coming up, I did provide some questions to staff and council, just to get some clarification, and so I'm going to go through those at this point in time. Some of them have been answered in regards to where things are with the federal government in regards to the Shenectady Isthmus. What I'm finding is that we as a council always seem to find out things last minute, and notifications of this nature coming from the province. So I'm just kind of wondering when the province announced that they would be participating with the federal government in this program. Do we have an idea when that program was announced?
Would you like us to get answers as you go through them?
Well, I mean, I can go through them, I guess, and
It's
I
probably
mean,
easier
yep,
to try
perfect
to respond.
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
Mr. Burke, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And Councillor Michaud, I guess we provided answers to the entire 11 questions before the meeting. So I trust you have that information, but the agreement that was signed between the two parties was announced on March 15th, 2018. And we were advised in July of 2018 that UMNB was going to include an infrastructure session at their annual general meeting. So because of the change in government, there was obviously a delay, which took some time. And it wasn't until recently, and as recent as May 7th, that they actually issued the request for expressions of interest. And the deadline to apply is June 28th.
I didn't see any, like, I didn't check my emails this afternoon, so if these were responded to, but I think they need to be public anyway, so. In regards to the deadlines that are set out for these grants, has there been any consideration, again, we find out about this last week, we're trying to make a decision within a week. You know, is there opportunity for extensions here? Do we have an opportunity to get this extended so we have a little more time to consider this?
We haven't inquired about an extension request process. We haven't asked. I guess we felt that we could get an application in by June 28th. Only shovel-ready projects are going to be considered, and we're going to be competing with municipalities across the province for a very limited amount of money. So I guess it was felt that the earlier we get the application in, the better.
And so just for clarity, we've been referring to this as a 4-page submission they've asked for, which is not a full application.
Correct.
Is there, so there would be another round of review from the funders before it would reach, it's like this is just putting our hand up to say we are interested as opposed to being approved.
Just regards to the breakdown of the 4.6 million, is there figures that are assigned to the quarry and to the ditch work and to the pond specifically, as opposed to just an overall figure of 4.6 million?
What we provided during the, I guess, the in-camera session, Councillor Michaud, was basically a budget breakdown of the three major components. We haven't gone out and I certainly don't have it here in front of me tonight, of a detailed breakdown of every individual component of each one of those three items.
So we don't have verified or determined numbers, then these were estimates, presuming then that was provided in camera? I guess the thing is, again, I talk about the fact that this is being funded by taxpayers and by the public, and if there's information that should be shared at this point in time, I think it's important that it's shared.
Well, yeah, thank you, Councillor Michaud. I guess, part of the reason why we meet in camera is because we're dealing with confidential information. Parts of this project have not yet been tendered, so therefore we certainly don't want to talk about price components of an individual project publicly, as that may jeopardize the overall fairness of the tendering program. So in camera, you were provided with some general numbers about the overall cost of the project, which is why we've approached it that way.
So those numbers aren't verified then, they're just some estimates that have been provided?
Well, I guess, yes, no, without getting into too much detail on the numbers. We've been through a tendering process for phase 2. Certainly circumstances have changed. There is construction inflation. We know Dwayne can speak widely about the construction inflation that we've experienced over the years, asphalt being a prime example. But the quarry project has never been out to tender. So like all of our projects, we put an engineer's estimate together. We then put that project out to tender to the private sector. They come back with pricing. Then it's additional information that council has in order to make a decision.
Just for clarification around the pond that's being talked about in regards to this application, was that the pond that was changed up when phase 2 was redesigned? Was that supposed to be part of the phase 2? And
the pond that would be included in this funding application would not be the same pond. The pond 3, I guess, as we've referred to all along, has always been shown on the conceptual plan, but it was not considered in the phase 2 tender that went out originally, that closed it over budget, nor was it included in the revised tender that went out with the change in scope.
And just when it comes to the work that's currently have been done in phase 2 and how the draining is happening towards the abattoir behind Armtech, and where that hasn't been addressed by the province as of yet. So now we're going to, just for clarification, now we're going to go back the other way and head towards Charles Street and Crescent and out that way, where there's another abattoir that has to be done. As we looked at this or next steps, would it make sense to, where we've already completed the work in phase 2 and heading in that route, would it make sense to say, okay, well, maybe part of this funding should go to the abattoir? And I know people will say, well, that's a provincial thing, but initially the council was going to repair and upgrade the abattoir out behind Charles, or not Charles, Crescent. So I'm just kind of wondering, would it make more sense to look at that abattoir as part of this, as opposed to just creating another pond, or making that part of it as well, saying, well, let's at least get the water flowing all the way out? And I'm just kind of wondering if that's ever been considered, the fact of, let's finish this off and then, continue on the route of pond, the next pond, and then hopefully something will come of it with the feds and the province in regards to next steps that we might be able to capitalize on as well.
Mr. Acton, you want to respond to?
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Michaud. Either way, you're building an abattoir. And we currently have the land through the industrial park. We also have behind the community gardens a large area that was designed and was where the third pond was going to go. So if an abateau has to be built, it's felt that the abateau through the industrial park and through a new pond 3 would be the preferred method. If you put an abateau, and you can't, it's already been indicated by the DTI that putting an abateau behind Armtec is not the right location to put it. They've indicated, okay, you could put it further down near Westcock, which is a possibility. There is another old abateau further down towards the old Carter home place. You could put it down there, and then now how do you get the water from there? You got to dig a large ditch all the way from there, which is about 1.5 kilometers or so. So there's a huge cost to that as well. So, and again, we, the town, don't own that. So if somebody else is going to build that, DTI are going to build that large ditch to get that down there and build that other abateau, then that would be an option.
But I think the other element there that when the initial phases looked at options, the 11 cubic meters of water under the 1 in 100 would simply not be able to be taken that direction, that those culverts and that one retention pond wasn't enough. It would flood that area. So it had to split into another part so that you had more of a retention pond. The other was that, as I will remind all of council, except probably took place before Councillor Michaud came on, that there were suggestions of various other alternatives that hadn't been looked at, and I did meet with the Deputy Minister of DTI and their senior staff, and they were adamant that abattoirs like this one behind Armtec was not going to be rebuilt. It did not make sense to do that. They don't know where that idea came from. They said they fully supported the idea of going out the other way, that made a lot more sense to them. And the difficulty of that, of course, is that they saw an opportunity to get their asset built higher than they would have built it themselves, because they changed the terms from being the replacement as it was in Westcock to being what they wanted to see when they rebuild it in the future. So there is an understanding, I think, in DTI that I heard about which abattoirs they're prepared to work on in the future. They haven't said it, but their actions tell us which ones they're talking about. So, Mr. Beale.
As well, you want to, getting confused which button to push here. As well, the one thing we want to point out is that the motion and the recommendation is to apply for funding related to municipal responsibility only. Under the bilateral agreement with the federal government, the provincial government can also apply and use money within this bilateral agreement on their own, and they're eligible for up to 50% federal funding relating to provincial properties. So our suggestion through staff was simply that we apply for infrastructure funding relating to municipal work, and that suggests to DTI and to the province that they use the bilateral agreement to cover 50% of their cost in reconstructing the abateau.
And that, I guess that was leading to one of my next questions is that, you know, here we are making a step. I understand that we have responsibility as a municipality, but at the same end, it seems that there still seems to be some snags in the fact of where the federal and provincial governments are. So if there's opportunity and we feel this as being a priority, then at this point in time, should we not be having a conversation with the province and saying, listen, so we're going to make application here, and we need you to, in order for this to work for our municipality, to kind of step up and make application at the same time to get the funding to get these to get that abateau repaired in the dike system. So I'm just kind of, you know, I mean, before, you know, it's good for us to show our initiative, but I think at the same time, I think having the province on board, would give me more confidence in the fact that, you know, we're spending the money in the right, that we're going to see this, you know, this part of the whole process finished off in the right way, as opposed to be left with just retention ponds and really no place for the water to go. So you know, maybe the time's come now that we say, listen, folks, the funding's there. We're being put behind the 8 ball in regards to making a decision. We need the province to make a commitment.
I absolutely agree with you. I would love to see the province make a commitment. If council passes the motion tonight, I will speak directly to the deputy and the minister on that, because we still need to understand what that study is going to do as well. If they announce that, that might give us a good indication of what their thinking is. But we just don't know right now. Sorry, I didn't see who was first. Was it Councillor Black?
The question was sort of asked, but if the Abadeau is not included in this out near the town garage, and then the Abadeau that's behind Armtech is not rebuilt, which is not in the plan, will there be enough space, or is there enough space for that water, if everything goes through, to sit here? Where will it go? If there was a 1 in 100 year flood, and we had what we have, the quarry, our retention pond, the next retention pond, big ditching, what would that look like?
Thank you, Councillor Black. Without getting too much in the details, but I'll give you a kind of a synopsis what would end up happening. Ideally, the DTI would put the Abadeau in, and obviously the water would continue to go out behind Armtech, but it'll also go out through the industrial park, through the 3rd retention pond, retention pond number 3, and then through a ditching network out to a new Abadeau. But if the new Abadeau is not being built, there is still capacity in the ditches and in the pond number 3, but not as much, because what will end up happening is it will be designed and built and constructed based on our design, in which case those ditches and a portion of the pond number 3 will fill with water. And then there will be a nominal level, and I believe I worked the number about 1.3 meters would be the nominal level of the water in the retention pond number 3. There's still capacity because there's still another up to 5.2 meters, so it goes from 4.5 up to 5.2 meters of capacity that would be in pond 3, and then that water would have a place to be stored during a major event in the ditching. And then as the storm subsides and the water will flow out through the Abadeau behind Armtech, and everything will go backwards as well as go forward out the existing Abadeau out off of Crescent Street. So some of the water will go out the existing Abadeau, even though I had mentioned that it's very small Abadeau. And then the rest of it would, after the storm, would end up going back, working backwards to go out the Abadeau behind Armtech. Until such time as the new Abadeau would be built, or the Abadeau will be built by DTI, hopefully.
Councillor Finney.
Yes, I was going to say I'll be voting against this, first of all, because as I've said all along, I have no intention of approving the quarry. I don't feel the town needs it. It's a liability. And as I said last month and in December, I have no faith in Crandall Engineering. And I've recommended that actually they be removed and replaced by another engineering firm. I'm starting to have very great concerns even about our staff. And so I'm actually even making a recommendation that Mr. Burke, Mr. Acton, and Mr. Hanrahan be removed from the employment of this town and find somebody to replace them as well. And that's how I feel. Thank you.
I think that's I just want to note, Councillor Finney, that there is no immunity for the words you say here. So you need to understand that that may be something that there may be some legal action taken dependent upon the reaction to that. It's just a warning, that's all. We all heard what you said and we understand that, but.
The reason I'm recommending it is because of the $525,000 mistake that was made by these people. So, thank you.
So what, if there are no other questions on this topic, I am going to suggest that we will, would you, CAO, could you just respond in terms of where we could provide some public information on this at a later date? We also will have a vote on the motion after that, so.
Okay, I think just to recap, I mean, from a municipal perspective, right or wrong, we tend to follow the money. It'd be nice if we had all the money we wanted and we set the rules, but typically he who has the gold makes the rules. And the federal government it's their program. They initiate agreements with the provinces to sign on. This agreement was announced by the federal government some time ago and took considerable time before the province agreed to what the agreement was going to be. As a result, we sit and we wait. And early May, as we're meeting in council, the information comes out, and yet the turnaround is June 28th. The good part about it, though, is staff already had a design in place and ready so that when the money was there, we did have and do have the shovel-ready projects to go ahead with. Many municipalities are frustrated because they do not have shovel-ready projects. So you can criticize all you want, but the reality is you're having this discussion tonight because we are ready and staff have done their job. Sorry if we can't please everybody. It's the nature of the beast, I guess, is that we're trying to put forward the best plan for the community of Sackville in the worst case flooding scenario. Not everybody got their land purchased, so some people criticize. That's fine. It's a democratic society, and you can make and complain after the fact, and it is what it is. But you know, our efforts are to bring the information to council like we did last Monday and shared all this with you. Everybody up here was at the meeting. Everybody asked the questions, and we asked them all again tonight. So I don't know how much more you want from staff, but we put all the information out. And after this meeting, once we have a decision to council, we'll put the information out again. And you can twist it and contort it for those that are inclined to want to do that. But we're just trying to put in place a plan to address the community and the flooding issues. I've only been here 6 years. Some say I needed a long service award. Given the past history of those that came before me, I guess it's not bad. But at that time, everybody was complaining about Lawrence Street not being done and Bridge Street not being done and the flooding not being done. You're right. Complain. We'll accept the criticism because we're doing things. So if you ask us to do something, we will do it. So tonight, it's do you wish to complete the plan? And if you wish to complete the plan, we have an option where there is potentially up to 75% funding or 77% funding from other partners. And we're trying to cash in and doing the project at the time that's most cost effective for the citizens. It pushes us financially. It doesn't fit with where we hope to be, and that's why the treasurer's put that out tonight. It might mean a tax increase in a year or two, but when we're at our financial position compared to other municipalities and our borrowing capacity, we're in very good shape in Sackville. So it might be opportune time to take this on. If it scares you, don't do it. You know, sit back and do nothing, and we'll just see what happens. Because you're right, you haven't had a flood in a few years. But you had 3 of them in my first 2 years here that weren't supposedly the 1 in 100. But it shut us down. There was lots of criticism and complaints. So depending on how council wishes to do this, it's your call. And the Abido, council decided last Monday night, the direction to staff was, we don't want to pay for the provincial asset. We asked the question. So that's why it is the way it is. It wasn't staff saying, don't do it. We brought it here. You people were elected to make the decision to be accountable to the public. We're here to do what you want us to do and you direct us to do. That's all we're trying to do. And as far as information, once again, if you go to the website, we'll have up-to-date information that's available, and it's just dependent on what your decision is. If you decide to go ahead with it, when the time is complete on the project, we'll have the information on the website. So anyway, I guarantee you that you get the best I can give every day, and I hold the same from everybody else. It's department head and sitting in front of us. So.
Thank you. Councillor Black, please.
Just one more thing, it's more of a comment, but it's been said a couple of times, and I just want to reiterate that when we were at UMNB, when we found out about this, there were sessions that the conference had, and one of them was on infrastructure, and the room was packed, full of people from UMNB listening about the infrastructure fund that was going to be coming. When it was announced that you needed shovel-ready, engineered-ready projects, there was an audible groan among most of the people who were in the room, because most municipalities can't pay for this. They're not going to put the money up front to have a project that's ready to go. We, well, not lucked out, I guess. I guess we lucked out because we had this already. It's done. It's ready to go. Our application, I think, is going to be reasonably successful because of this. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm not going to promise that we're going to get it, of course, but I think that our chances are pretty good. And strike while the iron is hot. So, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, Councillor Evans, last comment.
Okay, I a long time ago decided that it was very important not to let certain statements go unchallenged lest people think there was agreement. So that unfortunate criticism of the staff that I have learned to respect for their competence and hard work is not going to be, hearing someone criticize them is offensive to me. I think it's inappropriate, and I certainly do not agree with it. I have the utmost respect for the competency of the staff and also their hard work. This is a priority that council established. This is a plan that council approved. We are doing something that we said we were going to do when we approved it, but weren't able to afford to do. Now that money's available, we are expressing interest in getting that money. This is an obvious thing to do. And to sit here and take cheap shots at staff who are not in a position to defend themselves is inappropriate, and I'm offended, and I wanted to say my piece to make sure that nobody thinks I agree with it.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question now. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. All those opposed? Note there is a nay from Councillor Finney and a nay from Councillor Michaud. Motion is carried. Thank you. That is it for that topic, is it not? Deputy Mayor, that's good for Finance and Admin. We will go on to item D, Tourism and Business Development. Report from Councillor Tower.
Thank you, Your Worship. The information's on pages 31 and 32. Visitor numbers at the Vic Center are down slightly in 2019 as compared to last year. Last year we had 1,008 people and 6 waterfowl park tours. This year we have 804 people and 5 tours. But considering the weather of May, it's not surprising, really. To date, we still haven't unable to make any full assessment on the closure of the New Brunswick tourism in Olac, mainly because it doesn't usually open up into Victoria Day anyway. So, but we have taken additional measures to promote our VIX Center, with which includes a sign in Olac, additional highway signage, and increased social media promotions. Staff has reached out to provincial tourism officials to discuss the implications of the recent Olac Center closure, and also the Department of Transportation Infrastructure on 2 highway signs that failed due to the wind. Border Town Festival, which was 22nd to the 26th, was generally successful. Total expenses for the festival was $17,885, and revenue was $8,649. So the net cost to the town was $9,236. We budgeted $12,005, which means we came in under budget by $3,264. There will be a full report on the festival, including economic impact, presented at the July council meeting. The town has partnered with MBCC in Moncton for a work practicum through their business department, and so we are lucky to have Paxton Clare with us for the last 3 weeks. He assisted with the preparation and delivery of the border town and did a fine job at that. And he is completing an economic impact study for the festival of 2019. The department had booths at the Mount Allison Convocation weekend events and at Caro's conference in May. We also provided more than 500 visitor kits to groups visiting Sackville or to people who were considering coming to town. The town will also have a booth at the Atlantic Wildlife Festival in Amherst next weekend, June 15th and 16th. On June 25th, a local tourist attraction tour will be offered to businesses to deal with tourism. This is a popular event that lets tourism frontline workers from town see some of the great local and nearby attractions. Anybody wishing to attend should contact us at 364-4967 or visitor at sackville.com. We continue to work with our capital signs upgrade projects. Wayfinding signs are being installed at the Waterfowl Park. On June 19th, we will welcome the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce to Sackville to explore the interest in establishing a chamber presence in Sackville. This is an initiative from the town's new business development strategy. Staff attended a New Brunswick 101 training session in Moncton, facilitated by the Tourism Industry Association of Brunswick. The course presented various interesting and relevant facts about New Brunswick and its history and gave excellent customer service training tips. On June 22nd or 23rd is the rain date, we will be hosting the Sackville Waterfowl Park 30th anniversary celebration celebration of the new Dan Lund Park event. The day will begin with the dedication of the new park at the site, which is off the Squire Street, at 1:30, followed by anniversary remarks and other activities at the Visitors Information Center at 2:30. So for more information, go to sackville.com. And finally, on June 23rd, the town is collaborating with the Cooperative Council of New Brunswick and Greater Dorchester Moving Forward to present John Norman, the Baron of Bonavista, who was instrumental in turning around his town's economy. The presentation will be at 6:30 in council chambers. Admission is free, but please pre-register at sackville.com. And that is the report, Your Worship.
Questions on the report? Councillor O'Neill, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I was pleased to see where we're trying to include more signage in all that and so on, and along the highway, and increase social media promotions. And I was amazed, I guess, when I worked down at Saltscapes, that when a lady come along and I asked her if she had ever visited us, or visited our little town, and she said, "Your little town?" Yes, I said, "The town of Sackville." "Oh," she said, "I didn't know there was a town there." And I thought, this lady she wasn't just a kid, she would have been at least 30, and I said, "Oh, where are you from?" And she was down in the valley, so, but she said she'd gone by here, but didn't realize there was a town, so I don't know what we do. Get the RCMP to stop them all and direct them in through, I guess, around. Anyway, I just thought that I'd encourage you to think of all the ways you can to try to get them in. Thank you.
Councillor Black, please.
I had a comment and a question. I just wanted to say well done on Border Town. I heard really good things from people in the community, saying that the events were well attended and it seemed to move pretty smoothly, so I look forward to the report on that. But the visitor information numbers, And with all due respect, he said slightly, but it's a 20% drop, which seems to be fairly significant from last year. But is there any other reason other than just the lousy weather in May? Do you think that there's I mean, businesses, this happens, you get ups and downs, you can't force people to come and visit, but.
Black, and your worship. I've checked around the region and everybody seems to be down. Most people are attributing it to the weather. We really don't have any other information that would indicate a cause. One of the things, I'll say this now, maybe I shouldn't say this early in the season, but one of the things that we are slightly concerned about is that because there was so much coverage of the OLAC VIC being closed, that people may think there is not a VIC in this part of the province and may boot it right for the border. So that's why we've made an effort to have signs on the highway, and we're doing social media and all those other things so that people will be aware that there still is a visitor center here, and we have full service. We cover everything in the province, and if we can, we cover things outside of the province as well. So we're hoping that the numbers will pick up in June. Thanks.
Any other comments on the question? I'll make a couple. I noted as well the Bordertown Festival. I understood that in one of the meetings I was away that this was questioned about why or how we use business tools or business plans. And I think it's important in light of this, plus the approach to the concession stand at the rink, that the ability to have public servants understand what business tools are available and how they can protect the taxpayer's interest is a measure of the growth of the staff here. That the fact is that I believe Mr. Pride probably gets more grants than his salary every year because he's out there trying to find ways to help build the community and build the organizations. So it's this idea that we create an atmosphere for the staff to get aggressive and innovative within that context. I'm amazed sometimes that people don't see this. We see it on a regular basis. But that's, for example, the Bordertown Festival, using those tools ensured that the taxpayer was protected and we have money that we can put in other things. Mr. Pride is looking out for grants for all these organizations at a full time, and he's been very, very successful at it. The provision of services with a private sector partner, such as performers at Bordertown or the deliverer of the services at the concession stand or even Sappy Fest, is a way in which we bring in community development, tourism opportunities with private sector dollars, protecting our taxpayer dollars and leveraging them. So I think this is a hidden element of the way in which our staff have been working, and that ability to provide that context is really, really important. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind, that you only have innovative staff when you create that context and that milieu for them to operate in. So that said, thank you for that report. Thank you for the success on those. Any other comments on this? I don't believe there is a motion. No. Okay, no other comments on tourism. We move to public properties. Councillor Flitney.
Engineering and Public Works patching program for 2019 started on May 31st and will continue throughout the month of June and July or until all patching is completed. Public Works staff started working on repairs and gravel installation for Donald Harper Road as part of the capital projects for 2019. The work is expected to be completed by the first week of June. Public Works staff completed the site service and the majority of the site work around the new ball shed during the month of May. The remaining topsoil and seeding around the site will be completed over the next several weeks as time permits. Public Works Department continued to perform spring cleanup of damaged areas due to winter control operations. This work will continue throughout spring until all areas have been completed. The Utility Department repaired several curb stops, manhole, and water valves around town during the month of May. The tender results of tender number 2019-07, St. James and Bennett Street Infrastructure and Road Reconstruction, was discussed with Council on May 6th, with a Council approval to award the contract to the low bidder, Beal & Inch Construction, during the regular Council meeting on May 13th. Construction plans are now underway, and the town is working with the contractor on an early fall start with completion expected around the 1st of October. The engineering department has finalized the reconstruction plans for University Avenue and as a result had requested quotations on the major components for the water, sewer, and storm system for this project. Pricing was discussed with Council on June 3rd for the purchase of the required material and service. A motion will be coming forward during this regular Council meeting. The Engineering and Corporate Projects Departments participated in a Learning Day on natural and nature-based adaptation that was held at the Sackville Commons on June 4th. The event was funded by NRCan's Brace Building Regional Adaptation Capacity and Experience Program and the New Brunswick Department of Environment, DELG, and was organized by the New Brunswick Environmental Network. The town presented on the Lawrence Street Phase 2 project to an audience of over 50 people from across the province, consisting of government officials, engineers, planners, academics, technical experts, and a variety of environmental groups, all of whom are working on climate change adaptation strategies. The Engineering and Corporate Projects Departments presented to Mount Allison University Sustainable Communities class, GNV 3991, on May 14th here in Council Chambers. This class is instructed by Adam Cheeseman from Nature New Brunswick. The class was in to learn about the town's sustainability initiatives and received a tour of the Lawrence Street Phase 2 project. Tantamar Veterans Memorial Civic Center. Box lacrosse is played 2 nights a week at the Civic Center, and the last night of lacrosse for the season is June 19th. Thank you to all the volunteers that make lacrosse possible. Maritime Conference was held at the Civic Center again this year with 600 delegates participating. The Maritime Federation of Model Railroaders put on a great show at the Civic Center, bringing in well over 1,000 spectators. The evaluation of the current working agreement for canteen bar contract was completed during the month of May. The town is very pleased with the services that have been provided by the current provider, and this was discussed with Council during the June 3rd Council meeting, along with a recommendation to enter into a 2-year contract with the current provider. A motion will be coming forward during this regular Council meeting. Municipal parks. Parks and facility staff have been busy maintaining all the parks. The fence at Lilas Fawcett Park has been completed. The natural playground is nearing completion. The sports field have all been open for the season. The new ball shed is now in use. The washroom in the ball shed will be opened each morning through the week except for holidays. Staff will close them each afternoon. Each user group will open them during their event in the evenings and weekends. Some trail work has been done in the waterfowl park and will continue throughout the summer. Staff has started hanging banners and should have them complete by mid-June. This is only a little bit of the report. The rest of it's in the big report, and I recommend that you look to see what else is being done. And this has been submitted by Dwayne Acton, Town Engineer.
Questions on the report? Councillor Black.
I just had a couple of questions. The Donald Harper Road completion is set for the end of June. In the 2019 general capital, it says 100% of the budget available. You would spend that when the job is completely done, right? I was jogging out there the other day and saw that the road was re-gravelled and looked pretty good, but I didn't know there was more work to be done. But
Mr. Acton?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Black. The majority of that work has been completed. There was a few soft spots we put some drainage pipe into. We've gravelled the entire road, did some ditching in the area. We even tried some reclaimed asphalt where the 2 approaches to the bridge, because it seems to be the area that, because it's on a bit of a turn, there seems to be a lot of bumps occur there quite frequently. So we're trying some reclaimed asphalt. We felt it would hold better than gravel in that little area. So most of the work has been completed, maybe a little bit of touch-up that needs to be done.
Another?
Yep. I wanted to know the Learning Day and then the University Sustainable Communities class both had tours of Lawrence Street Phase 2. Can either Dwayne or Jamie, I guess, have you guys heard anything from those groups as to what they thought of the work that the town has been doing on the retention pond or other projects involving it?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Black. I guess it's always a bit exciting with some, energy when we have the students, in town hall to learn about some of the exciting projects and work that we're undertaking as a municipality. I think it's been an eye-opener for especially the students to see what's involved with kind of building a naturalized stormwater retention pond. Kind of taking them through the why we're doing it and the process we've used to both leverage funding and then undertake the construction and, kind of the ups and downs that come with a large complex project like that. With the BRACE program specifically, I guess there was we did hear directly from the organizers after the meeting. We had 50 influential people here from across the province here to learn specifically about our stormwater retention pond. And many left, according to the organizers. This isn't from Dwayne or I, that this was the highlight of their day, to come here and learn about the project that we've taken on and how it's looking already without some of the vegetation, of course, having already come in. So it was a really good experience for networking for both Dwayne and I, of course. But again, just to be able to use a project that you're doing as an example for good projects across the province on how to use nature-based solutions for climate change adaptation, I think speaks to the volume of the project that we have underway.
It's more of a comment. I just want to say thank you and to say how excited I am and my family particularly who keep asking about it. But thanks to Matt and Todd for the natural playground out there. I'm looking forward to when that opens. I'm not going to say that it's just for my kids to climb on because chances are I'll be all over it. But anyway, looks great. Thanks.
Yes, no other questions on the report? Councillor Finney, you have several motions.
Yes, I move the council approve the working agreement with Marianne Oster for canteen bar services for a further 2-year term from October 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2021.
Moved by Councillor Finney, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
I move that council approve the following maintenance contracts for Sackville Town Hall building for 5-year term. It's got team, but term. Black & McDonald, heating, cooling, ventilation, and backflow prevention. Year 1, $17,197 plus HST. Year 2, 3, and 4, and 5, increase each year by 2%. Otis Canada Incorporated, elevator. Year 1, $3,270 plus HST. Year 2, 3, 4, and 5, increase each year by the CPI and cost of living. Tormont Cat generator, year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, $5,250 plus HST. Refuel System Inc., generator fuel system, year 1, $1,375 plus HST. Year 2, $1,425 plus HST. Year 3, 4, 5, $1,475 plus HST.
Moved by Councillor Finney, seconded by Councillor Evans. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Finney.
I move that council approve the Public Works Utility Department to proceed with the reconstruction of University Avenue and approve expenditures for project materials from the following companies as per the submitted quotes 2019 for overall costs of approximately Wolseley Waterworks, $20,737.38 plus HST. Stresscon Limited, $12,000 plus HST. Monarch Construction, $14,880 plus HST. McLennan Sales, $3,165.90 plus HST.
Moved by Councillor Finney, seconded by Councillor Tower. This was detailed in the discussion. Maybe Mr. Acton, you could just give a bit background. This is the project that the town is looking for resources.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, this is the town staff will be doing University Avenue as part of the capital budget program. And because Public Works is doing this with our own staff and equipment, we need to go ahead and purchase the necessary equipment to be able to do so. And these are the major components to be able to do that. So all the water pipe and all the fittings required, fire hydrants on the sewer side, the manholes, and the pipe to do the sewer system. And of course, the curb and gutter on both sides be serviced out to Monarch Construction. They have curb machines that come in and do the curbs, and the supply of the water main from McLennan. As I say, these are the bulk of the materials that we need. There's a few things we have to purchase gravel to put on the road. We'll purchase that, and we have to hire trucks to truck the gravel from Gatens to down. So there's a few other things, as I indicated, that will come along, but these are the major items for that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Black?
And just for the public record, since Dwayne maybe was too modest to say it, the budget amount was $245,000 that we had budgeted, and give or take, it'll be about 58,000, let's say 60,000 to do the job. So we're going to be way under budget. So just wanted to put that out there for public record.
Thank you. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Finney. Move on to recreation programs and events. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report's on page 36 and 37. Registration for our summer programs are now open. The full summer program guide is now available online. Nominations, this is important to note that nomination period for volunteer recognition has been extended to June the 15th. Summer students have been hired and will begin training on June the 24th. A very exciting day up at the Civic Center. Saw the Model Railway Convention and Public Show, which proved to be a really successful event. They say that it attracted 65 delegates from Eastern Canada and the United States, and approximately 1,500 visitors to the train show itself. I know I was there, and it was hard even to find your way around at 10 in the morning, and it was a really awesome event. I hope they are asked back again. The Beach Hill Park Challenge Obstacle Course race will take place on July the 13th. Registration is open at www.sackville.com programs. The Friday night, here's some nights to mark on your calendar or some events. The Friday night Antique Car Cruise will return to Sackville on July the 26th. That's a Friday evening. As presented to Council in May, the Sackville farmers would like to host a licensed harvest supper during the fall fair on Sunday, September the 22nd. The Sackville Triathlon will take place August the 24th. A motion will follow regarding that. The Sackville Street Chalk Art Festival will take place August the 23rd and 24th. And the 19th Annual Fall Fair will be held again this year, September the 18th to the 22nd. New features this year will include a live comedy act from Marshall Button at the Vogue Theatre and a harvest dinner in the tent hosted by the Farmers Market. And I have a motion for that. I move that Council approve the closure of Main Street from Donald Harper Road to Station Road, as well as Church Street from McPhee Lane to Main Street on Saturday, August the 24th, 2019, from 8:30 a.m. to 12 noon in order to facilitate the Sackville Swim Club Triathlon.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Butcher. Question?
Question.
Oh, Deputy Mayor Aiken, please.
Can I ask why they're closing Main Street from Donald Harper instead of from Morris Drive, which is closer to the event?
Mr. Pride? Mr. Acton.
Thank you, Your Worship, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, the reason for it is the racers will be going out onto Main Street, heading up to Donald Harper, going down Donald Harper and getting on the rails to trail and then heading down there on the run. So they block it there so they can carefully divert the traffic down Donald Harper and not have them come up that way. So the local traffic will be able to get through though. Yeah, local traffic.
Yeah, because I was under the impression that last year they only used the trail for running, wasn't on the streets at all.
Mr. Cole?
I'll try to chime in here a little bit. When they leave the swimming area, they go across Main Street, and they're in a hurry, and they're not looking for cars, so that's why they're closing up Donald Harper, so there's no vehicle traffic coming down that way. They're coming out of the water, right across.
I volunteered at it for several years, and I know the routes, so, but it seems a lot to close just to, you know, they're really coming out of Morris Drive and down toward where the mailboxes are.
Yeah, we would have to turn them back around, like even if we blocked it at Morris, like the traffic would have to double back and go down to get all the way around towards if they were going to Midget, that sort of thing. So it's much easier to do Donald Harper, down Donald Harper to Falcons around Church Street, and then back to 940, back out on Station Street. So it's a lot easier. You're welcome.
Okay. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
I have one more.
Yes?
I move that council grant permission to the Sackville Farmers Market to license a secured area in the fall fair tent for a harvest supper event on Sunday, September the 22nd, 2019, from 4 p.m. until 11 p.m., subject to provincial liquor and safety laws.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Michaud. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. You have the library report continue?
Yes, I also have the library report. Over 1,500 people visited the library here in Sackville in the month of May, and the provincially funded Summer Reading Club activity leader has been hired and has started work. And I guess that's all I have for that report, for sure.
Councillor Michaud.
Just on the recreation programs report, a relative of mine is one of the 65 delegates in regards to the model railroading, and he was part of the organizing group, and he relayed to me how the group was very, very impressed with how frontline staff at the Civic Center actually came and actually helped them bring the setup and stuff right into the facility, and they've never seen that happen before. So a lot of good experiences from the group, from what I understand. He said they'd love to bring it back again next year, but they do a rotation thing. So, but with that type of hospitality, the word will spread. So that's awesome.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just like to add my comments on the new play structures, excuse me, at Lilas Fawcett Park. I drive by them every day, and I have to confess, when we first proposed it, I was unimpressed with what seemed like a pile of logs and rocks. But when I see it being built there, it's actually quite impressive and quite intricate. And congratulations on it. I think it's going to be a real asset to that park. And I'll try and keep Councillor Black off the structures as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. We move to public safety. Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. The report can be found starting on page 39. I will be doing the fire EMO portion. We met with Chief Bowser and Sergeant Gagne on May 29th. So for the month of May, Sackville Fire and Rescue responded to 13 calls for service. That included 3 motor vehicle collisions, 3 commercial fire alarms, 3 grass fires, 3 calls for assistance from Ambulance New Brunswick, and just to throw off the groups of 3s, 1 vehicle fire. So the total number of calls for service to date remained down compared to the same time frame last year. Training sessions that took place in the month of May were self-contained breathing apparatus, which is SCUBA, SCBA, but all of the acronyms always throw me off. Pump operations, rescue boat training, and station and equipment checks. And the firefighters held the annual muscular dystrophy boot drive on Saturday, May 11th, from 9 till 1. And $4,400 was raised during this event, which is pretty amazing. And there will be a check presentation to muscular dystrophy in the near future from our fire department. Just a reminder, it's that time of year. Rubbish fires are strictly prohibited within town limits, and if you're wanting to have a bonfire within town limits, it needs to be within an outdoor wood-burning appliance, which is manufactured, non-combustible enclosed container designed to hold a small fire for decorative purposes only, and the size of the wood-burning appliance shouldn't be larger than 1 meter in any directions, and it can have a chimney. The 14th annual truck draw tickets are around in the business community. You should purchase one early so that you can use the coupons on the ticket stub. And as always, the chief would like to remind people to have an emergency kit prepared to last 72 hours. And that is my portion of the report.
Thank you.
Oh, that's not mine. Also, thank you, Councillor Black. I would like to welcome our Deputy Chief of Training, Sean Finney, to the role. Sorry.
Thank you. Welcome. Got to follow those bylaw officers. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the notice. Councillor O'Neill, you have the second part of this.
Yes, I do, Your Worship. This is for our public services. Again, continuing the trend, overall calls for service were down this year compared to last year. 89 calls this year compared to 101 last year. Mental health related calls continues to drain on their resources, with several calls falling specifically and only under mental health authorities. Property crimes steady at 15, reported of various natures, and there was a cluster of 4 thefts that were attributed to one individual. On the traffic side, a number of violations were issued. There were 11 speeding tickets issued in May. Also, there were 5 collisions in town this month, which caused property damage in all of those. In the community relations, there were several school visits with members attending, and our community programs officer initiated many traffic-related sessions this month to assist with the different educational initiatives. And speaking of our community programs officer, he continues to be busy visiting schools. He's works through the community with different things. He's on many committees, and he also is has 15 files that he's working on, and he's also has done 17 presentations and workshops. So he's a busy lad, very helpful for our community. That's all, Your Worship.
Any questions on the report? Okay. Councillor Butcher.
I just wanted to mention, sorry, that JF, he's such a benefit to our community. I was one of the 2 parents who took on the challenge of bringing the grade 8s to Quebec City for 4 days, and JF LeBlanc came along with us. And maybe it's just because we have absolutely amazing kids in our town, which is probably a good reason, good part of it too. But there's also the fact that he builds a rapport with those students that's built on respect both ways. And we had such a fabulous trip. Those grade 8 students were not just the kind who didn't cause problems. They were the kind of kids who opened doors for strangers. They were the kind of kids who thanked the bus driver every time they got off the bus. They were the kind of kids who represented our community in such an amazing way. But I really think that goes back to having him along with us as well. So I would just like to say thank you again for having him, and thanks to council for approving having him. The other thing I wanted to mention that's not in the report is that JF received an award just recently. I can't remember the details of it. The IODE.
IODE provides a recognition of significant contributions to communities and community development, and Jean-Francois won this last one. It is on our Twitter feed if you want to see that, and it was presented by the Commissioner of the RCMP. So it's a sound recognition of the role he plays by another group. So thanks for bringing that up. Any other questions on the reports? No? Move to policy bylaw. Councillor Butcher again.
It is. So we met on May 15th. Bylaw number 251, a bylaw respecting the procedure and organization of council, was provided at the meeting and noted in the bylaw were the housekeeping changes as well as information received from the survey that was sent out to council. And this bylaw was also presented at the special meeting of council last week, and this bylaw will now go back to the policy bylaw liaison meeting for further review. Employee use of town facilities policy. This policy was repealed by a motion passed by council at the May 14th meeting, the regular meeting of council. Bylaw number 244, Town of Sackville zoning bylaw. The resolution was passed at council on May 14th at the regular council meeting, directing that an appropriate bylaw be prepared to amend that bylaw 244, and that the proposed bylaw be referred to the Southeast Planning Review, as we saw tonight. The clerk's office welcomed Becky Goodwin on May 29th as the town's assistant clerk, and the clerk will be attending the Maritime Connection Summit on June 20th and 21st in Fredericton, where information will be shared on topics including our TIPA coordinator, organizational privacy, organizational access, and other topics. And just a reminder that to see the town's bylaws, they are uploaded to the town's website once they receive third and final reading. And that's my report.
Questions on the bylaw report? Councillor Evans, please.
Yeah, not so much a question as a comment, and it was alluded to earlier, but during the discussion meeting, a proposed change to a bylaw was brought forward, and we had a really good discussion, I thought. And so the decision to refer it back to policy bylaw, have another kick at the can is something I think is an example of the system working. I don't see that as a problem or a failure in any way. I think having a good discussion and debate and getting things right is something to be lauded. So I just wanted to comment on a non-event that's happening at this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or non-comments on the report? No? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item, personnel. Is that you, Mr. Black, Councillor Black, or is it Councillor Evans?
Council liaison meeting was held on June 6th, and at the end of May, there were 37 permanent employees, 2 temporary employees, and 12 summer students. An internal job notice was posted for the Public Works foreman, and the closing date is today. So if you didn't apply, you missed it. The grievance for call-out provision remains outstanding, and I know this is already mentioned, but she deserves mentioning again. The assistant clerk position has concluded, the search has concluded with the appointment of Becky Goodwin, again. She commenced her employment in the town on May 29th, and we're pleased to welcome Becky to our organization. Many of our summer students have been hired and will be coming on staff over the next month or so. Those who have already been hired are actively involved in our orientation program, including a first aid session. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on personnel? Seeing none, go to item J, Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development. Deputy Mayor, you're providing that one?
Thank you, Your Worship. The report appears on page 45 of the package, and one thing about being the last report is that everyone else steals your thunder. So, so I'll not talk about the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce or the NRCan brace program. But staff attend a variety of meetings over the month, including the Southeast Regional Service Commission's Planning Management meeting, a meeting with the Farmers Market on public engagement, one with Mount Allison's Director of Experiential Learning on partnership opportunities, and a meeting with EOS Eco Energy on a variety of topics, and approximately 20 residents from the Charles and Beale Heights area regarding the Lawrence Street Phase 2 construction project. And we're very pleased to have partnered with EOS Eco Energy on the depaving site at the Bill Johnson Memorial Park. Staff are continuing to assist Parks and Facilities Department and Public Works Department with some of the necessary approvals for the 2019 Lund property improvements, along with the Sackville Rotary Club's bridge project that will eventually connect the Waterfowl Park with the recently acquired Lund property. Approval has now been granted by Environment and Climate Change Canada, and an application for access approval was submitted to the New Brunswick Department of Natural Resources, and we found out Friday that application has been approved. Staff have commenced work on a marketing and communications plan, which is the second action item in the town's strategic plan. And staff will be looking to complete the communications piece of the plan internally, while the marketing portion will be put out to request for proposals in coming weeks. Staff continue to assist our Lawrence Street Phase 2 project, and our latest full project update was provided on May 28th, which is shared in our monthly newsletter, website, and social media contacts. And finally, at the end of June, we'll again be welcoming SHAD students to Mount Allison for the month of July. We're expecting 54 students this summer, and similar to 2018, we've planned a variety of events for the students to engage in the community life and issues and help make them feel at home. And we look forward to building on our successful partnership with Mount Allison SHAD program this summer. The SHAD program, as you may realize, is here for at least another 2 or 3 years. So it's good to be welcoming these students from across Canada. And that's the report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Michaud, you wanted a couple of questions about that Beale meeting, and that's referenced in this report. Is there any particular items you'd like to?
Well, no, what I can do is the document I have, I can just touch base with Mr. Burke and go over those specific questions, and if it's something that should be shared, then we can pass along. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you've got that. Yeah. Councillor Black, please.
I know in the tourism and business development, the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce coming to Sackville on June 19th was mentioned, but it doesn't have a time in the package, and I'm not sure if it was mentioned, so I will mention it, that it says in here that it's at 7 p.m. at Town Hall. And if it was mentioned once already, well, now you've got it twice.
Others, you have a couple of motions?
Yes, Your Worship. In the package, the motion is presented as one long one about the Sappy Arts Festival. I think with the consent of the chair, I'd like to break that into 4 motions because it's about the same thing but different aspects of it.
Sorry, you're going to break it into?
Just where you see every sort of bullet point, I'd like to make a separate motion.
Okay. With the approval of council? Seems to be acceptable. Okay. So we'll just be careful we capture the wording properly when you're doing this.
I move that council approve the following for our Sappy Fest Contemporary Arts Festival: to grant the temporary closure of Bridge Street from Lawrence Street to Main Street on Thursday, August 1st, 2019, beginning at 8 p.m. until Monday, August 5th, 2019 at 12 noon, in order to facilitate the use of a tent for events during the festival.
Motion 1 moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Finney. Councillor Michaud.
I just have the one question, and I appreciate the breaking of this motion up. In the event if Bridge Street was not available, I'm just wondering if staff have actually spoken with event organizers at alternatives, so that if Bridge Street wasn't available or if something came up, are there alternatives, or if council so chose not to approve this? Just wondering if that type of thing has been discussed with that organization. So,
Mr. Burke.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Michaud. This year specifically, I guess it hasn't been raised with the organizers because we knew Bridge Street would be available subject to council approval. However, in the past, we've had excellent dialogue with the board of Sappy Fest where we knew Bridge Street wasn't available and we had to juggle things, and we moved it to York Street as an example. So I guess in this case, no, we haven't explored those conversations. In the event the council doesn't approve the motion, we would then reach out to the board to find an alternative arrangement.
Any other questions on motion 1? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Motion number 2, Deputy Mayor.
I move that I move the town council waive the rental of town-owned property such as tables, chairs, picnic tables, and other similar items from the Tantramar Veterans Memorial Civic Center to Sappy Fest from August 1st, 2019 to August 5th, 2019, with the understanding that Sappy Fest will be responsible for lost or damaged equipment.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Questions? Question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that town council grant a time exemption from 11 p.m. to 12 midnight on Friday, August 2nd, 2019, Saturday, August 3rd, 2019, and Sunday, August 4th, 2019, as per bylaw number 246, the Town of Sackville Noise Bylaw.
Section 5.
Section 5.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Michaud. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
And finally, I move that council grant permission for the Sappy Fest Contemporary Arts Festival to operate a beer garden in a secured area on Bridge Street on Friday, August 2nd, 2019, Saturday, August 3rd, 2019, and Sunday, August 4th, 2019, subject to provincial liquor and safety laws and obtaining liability insurance in the amount of $2 million, naming the town of Sackville as co-insured.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Tower. Question?
Question.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move the council request the consent of the Southeast Regional Service Commission and Planning Review and Adjustment Committee to sell a portion of land for public purpose identified by PID number 70435433 as presented during the in-camera meeting on June 3rd, 2019.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Michaud. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And that takes us to new business. This is the time of year in which council decides on a new deputy mayor. This is a council function, not the mayor's function. And the floor will be open to nominations for deputy mayor. So I'm opening the floor for any councillor to nominate a deputy mayor candidate. Councillor Finney, please.
Nominate Sean Michaud as deputy mayor.
Okay.
I nominate Ron Aiken.
Okay. Any other nominations? We have, so I'll call for a third and final time. Any other nominations? We have 2 candidates. Will you both accept if the vote comes out in your favor? Okay. So then I will ask for a show of hands. The first one nominated was Sean Michaud. So for those in favor of Sean Michaud as deputy mayor, please raise your hands. Councillor, okay. Councillor Finney, Councillor Michaud. For those in favor of Ron Aiken, please raise your hands. Okay, remaining councillors. So it is Deputy Mayor is chosen, and thank you for that. Appreciate that. The second item here is appointment of liaison councillors. There is no appointment to be made. What I have decided was that we had just had the by-election. We had just done a minor adjustment, moved, shuffled people around. I felt it was more important to continue at this point with the existing liaison. So it has to be on the agenda once a year. It is on the agenda just to give notice that I do not intend to adjust the liaisons at this point. Okay? So that takes us to question period.
I have 3 questions. The first one relates to the opportunity to complete Phase 3 of the Lawrence Street project. I'm just wondering how firm that opportunity is, given that we have a new government in Fredericton. I understand from what you were saying that this is a federal program and that the province and municipalities can take part. I just need to get a feel for how strong an opportunity the town has to win an application for the funding of Phase 3.
Well, nothing's certain. I would say there has been a great deal of confusion on when this was coming forward, particularly in this province, because there had been a statement that there would not be significant infrastructure by the provincial government. And there were lots of questions about what that meant for cost-shared infrastructure. And it has only recently that we heard from a provincial organization, which is not a ministry, it's the Regional Development Corporation, that has asked for submissions of interest. So it would appear that they have a mandate to enter into cost-share agreements now from the provincial side. We do not know what those technical details are, as Mr. Beal spoke. It could be a variety of types of contributions, from 25 to 33%. So the process is only a submission of interest right now, which is what we have approved. This decision will be made by others than us. I think the other thing that we have talked about was the change in the requirement for engineered shovel-ready projects. Is very difficult for smaller communities to meet, and many of them at the UMNB last year said we're simply not going to be able to participate. So I think our odds are pretty good of being seen as a potential candidate, but that will be made by somebody else under their criteria. So we don't know how that will turn out.
Am I right that this is a federal program primarily?
It's a federal, provincial, municipal cost shared. So all parties have to have a portion of money to address.
Second question.
Councillor Evans wishes to just jump in on that same topic.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. What the mayor said is correct in terms of being positive. I think one of the negative aspects is it's a relatively small pot of money. If I don't recall the actual amount, but it's not like $500 million or something. Perhaps the treasurer can provide the specifics.
First year's 5. Provincial portion is only $5 million that we're aware of. So it's not a huge pool of money.
$5 million for the province.
Yes, for the province's share in that cost sharing.
All right. My second question, Mr. Mayor, you've been talking to CN lately. I understand that they withdrew their 2014 letter. I just need some clarification on their current position regarding the town's liability for any stoppage in rail service because of flooding.
They did not say specifically. This actually comes from a variety of other communities that have had rail interruptions, and their informal conversations have made it clear that CN is very litigious about any disruption and any commercial value that is impacted. So the implication from other communities was it will happen, and we had one letter suggesting that it was going to happen on what appeared to be a fairly minimal amount of flooding. So that's what we've had. They have not given us a direct comment or a direct statement on that.
My third question has to do with bylaw number 251, which is a bylaw respecting the procedure and organization of council. I see that it's been referred back to committee for more work. I'm wondering if there was quite a discussion last week about the ability for the public to ask questions at your special council meetings, and I'm wondering if that is still a live issue as this bylaw undergoes review. I have a special interest in that myself.
Yeah, I don't believe it is. I think we clarified that the wording that was used could be read in a very restrictive way, and I think we clarified that that was not the intent of council. So there's a variety of reasons why it's in there. So I think we've addressed the issue you wanted to raise there, though.
It's not just housekeeping issues that are, it will be more far-ranging than that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can I, just while you're up there, can I just ask you, Public Safety of the Province has indicated that they have contacted you about their ATV story with some concerns about the accuracies of some of the content. That was last month, I understand.
They did. A communications officer from Public Safety said that there is no way that children as young as 6 will be allowed on town streets. I've been trying to, I talked to the road enforcement who said that in effect what the bylaw does is extend the rules for trails to the streets, which, he said, would mean that children as young as 6, providing they're on the smaller machines and supervised by someone who has taken the course and they have taken the course, could be on town streets. Now, the frustration for me is that I called repeatedly to seek clarification, to try to iron out this discrepancy, and enforcement doesn't get back to me. So I haven't changed my story, but I did hear from the communications officer, and I've been working on it. One of the problems in New Brunswick is that the province likes to control communications, and they don't like it if civil servants speak on the record to you, providing information. They want you to go through communications. So the enforcement officer I talked to asked me not to use his name. So I'm left now in between, having been assured by someone in a real position to know what the rules are and who enforces them, one thing, and then coming from Public Safety, the communications officer, another thing. So there's a lot of confusion. I know that initially you thought that no one under 16 without a driver's license would be allowed to operate on town streets. It now appears the position of the province is that the minimum age will be 14. But I'm working on it. I'm trying to get through and try to get that resolved.
Right. So as we heard from Public Safety was,
Yeah.
right, it could be, it's 16, a normal situation, 14 and 15 if they passed a
Right.
certain course, and if they're supervised by somebody over 19 with appropriate, within a visual range of that ATV, they would be allowed there, but they have to have a specific training, a specific type of vehicle suited for them, and a person overseeing them.
I've been given 3 different versions, and it is a bit frustrating. And the lesson I take away from it is that it's not wise to talk to somebody whom you cannot name, because you can be left holding the bag. In this case, I'm not sure what the truth is.
Okay, so you're still looking into that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Bruce. I think it's, in preparation for the vote on that particular topic, I read the Off-Road Vehicle Act, and it states quite explicitly in there that anyone under 14 can only ride a ATV on a closed course. Section 1931, if you...
I did read the act too, and then I talked to somebody because they're open to interpretation.
Well, you have the act and you have regulations.
Yeah.
Separate things.
I know.
The act says, in accordance with regulations, anyone under 14, or it says youth, I believe, can operate on a closed course only. And the regulations specify you got to wear a helmet, you got to be instructed, you got to have a small bike.
However, it is true that younger children can operate on trails.
The act says a closed course.
Yeah.
And however that's defined.
I did read that. I never go by my own interpretation of a law without checking with someone who knows what the words mean. And that's what I did. So I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating.
Okay, thanks for that. Questions from the audience?
Mayor and Council, I have two quick questions. The first one is in reference to the tourism report where it talks about the DTI signs that were blown down. One is, of course, exit 506. The other one was up, I think, past Beach Hill. My understanding is that the Beach Hill one has been put back up. The 506 one hasn't. Do we know from talking to DTI when that will go back up? We are in tourism season now, and it'd be nice to have that up.
Mr. Burke?
Yeah, I guess we've reached out to DTI. They haven't given us any indication of a timeline to get those signs erected. We have made a note internally to follow up with them and just let them know that, especially now that we have our tourism numbers in, the tourism numbers are down, that hopefully that may give them a bit of extra momentum, I guess, to get the signs back up more quickly.
Okay. The other question I have is, so I read an article, actually, I think that Bruce wrote, about this test pavement that was done, the permeable pavement behind the post office. So I'm just wondering how the location was determined, like was the town involved in that at all? Because it seems kind of silly to me that we would do it in a parking lot and not on a roadway where you could actually test it to see how it was gonna to stand with traffic and stuff. Or maybe the test wasn't the traffic, maybe the test was something else.
Mr. Acton?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I can shed some light on that. It wasn't a test of traffic, it was a test of permeability. So we worked with EOS. We had a couple different locations selected. One was at the Tourist Bureau. The idea for EOS was to get as much exposure and so people could see it, and they're going to put interpretive signing. We then looked at a current drainage issue that we have near Bill Johnson Park. And the parking space that was chosen was actually needed repair for one thing, and two, there was always a puddle of water laying there, and that was as a result of that, that's why we selected that site, because there is water that runs to it, and we had to do something with that parking spot anyways, either repair it, or in this case, we had the opportunity to do this depaving project, and we suggested that, and EOS looked at it and agreed. And that was the reason that it was selected, and lo and behold, the day after, I think we got rain after the depaving project went down, and no water was there, and so far, all indications is it's working well.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I think we have a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Councillor Finney. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.